China's President Xi will get red carpet treatment from Trump at Mar-a-Lago next month as he becomes latest leader invited to enter White House. U.S. President Donald Trump is planning to host Chinese President Xi Jinping at a two-day summit next month at his Florida Mar-a-Lago resort, according to media reports. The two-day meeting is tentatively scheduled for April 6 to 7, U.S. online media outlet Axios reported on Monday, citing officials familiar with the plans. CNN also reported the planned summit, citing an unnamed administration official. It added the plan was tentative and that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson was expected to finalize plans during a trip this week to Asia, which includes a stop in China. The U.S. administration official, asked not to be named because no official announcement has been made about the meeting, said the summit was possible but was not confirmed. China's foreign ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comment. The reported summit would follow a string of other recent U.S.-China meetings and conversations seeking to smooth ties after aggressive criticism of China by Trump during his election campaign. Chinese State Councilor Yang Jiechi, who outranks his country's foreign minister, visited Washington last month to discuss the two countries' economic ties and security interests, including meetings with Trump and Tillerson. During his campaign, Trump accused China of unfair trade policies, criticized its island building in the strategic South China Sea claimed by several countries, and accused it of doing too little to constrain its neighbor, North Korea.
Look who's here. Kellyanne Conway, special advisor to President Trump, joins us live on the Curvy Couch, not in D.C. today. How are you?
D.C. soon.
Yeah, 53 days in.
Yes.
What does it feel like?
Well, I always count the Trump administration days in dog years, 7 days for everyone, only because the president is constantly acting and making good on his campaign promises. You see, the stock market loves his candidacy. Job creators love his presidency. Job creators love his presidency. We have 235,000 new jobs created, many of them in manufacturing, in construction, in mining. Less than 5% unemployment rate, and you already see the impact of his presidency.
What I would love is the two numbers. I want the the normal 4.7% of the people in there, but the other number matters too. The people who are just out of the workforce and not counted. And let's just try to work on both those numbers. Would there be a political issue with that?
The president is working on both of those numbers, Brian, and I think the consumer confidence you see, the economic optimism where, yes, jobs are being created, but people also just feel better. People are spending their money. There's consumer confidence. And also, when you repeal and replace something as draconian as Obamacare, you're going to unleash more economic prosperity because people, through these tax credits, who don't get employer-sponsored or Medicaid-sponsored health insurance will have the opportunity, the choices, the competition to buy across state lines and get affordable care. You know, right now, some people in this country have an insurance card and literally can't use it.
Yeah.
They can't afford to pay the premiums or the deductibles. You have 5 states and 1,021 counties right now where you only have one choice. One choice is not a choice at all.
Okay. Right, CBO report comes out today. You had Bernie Sanders on, well, you had Democrats and Republicans on all the Sunday shows over the weekend. You had Democrats like Bernie Sanders saying it's ridiculous, insanity. Listen to what he said.
It is an absolute disaster. It is a disgrace. And by the way, this really has nothing to do with health care. What this has everything to do with is a massive shift of wealth from working people and middle-income people to the very richest people in this country. In my view, and what the American people want is an improvement on Obamacare, not the decimation of Obamacare and throwing so many people off of health insurance and raising premiums substantially.
I'm confused because when Obamacare went into effect, suddenly a lot of people who had been buying health insurance couldn't afford it.
They couldn't afford it anymore, and that was one of the big lies, along with if you like your plan, keep your plan. If you like your doctor, keep your doctor. But look, Bernie Sanders ran on single payer, and he lost. Hillary Clinton ran defending Obamacare, and she lost. People want something different, and they don't think plugging the holes and patching it up is enough. You need fundamental reform. That's why with health savings accounts, you're in better control of your health spending. We're going to give these governors more flexibility in the way Medicaid dollars are spent. Those closest to the people in need will be able to administer it. And you're going to have, when he says a shift from middle class and the workers, that's absolutely false, because what we're trying to do in our repeal and replace strategy here through the American Health Care Act is to take those farmers, those mechanics, those small business owners who currently can't access and afford care should be able to do that by pooling together in one place of these associated plans. That's prong 3 of the
phase 3, but phase 3 is 60 votes in the Senate.
That's right.
So that's going to be the biggest challenge, and that is also where you get insurance across state lines.
Yes.
So that's going to take some wheeling and dealing. Tell me, Kellyanne, the one thing, I remember the first time you came out and you said when Mitt Romney was going to be the next Secretary of State who was up there, you came out and said, I'm not comfortable with that. And a lot of people said, oh, wait a second, you know, is the president-elect comfortable with you saying that? Having said that, from what you've observed, have you seen that the president has the ability to do what he does best, and that's negotiate?
Yes.
So you have Elijah Cummings who says, he's talking to me about bringing the price of big pharma down.
Yes.
You have Rand Paul saying, I talked to him, and this president wants to deal. But there's a sense that Paul Ryan doesn't want to deal. Is the president going to get his way on that and say, okay, this is the Ryan plan. I listen. I also listen to others talk, and I'm going to factor some of this in.
The president and the vice president have leaned into this legislation, and the president did what leaders do this week. He listened, he's negotiating, but he's also the ultimate decision maker and deal maker. Well, what the president has said is if you have good improvements to the bill, let's hear them. And just this past week, Brian, he had leaders of the grassroots movement in who represent millions of people who are concerned about health care. He had 35 of the whips in. Vice President Pence was up on Capitol Hill at a lunch with the Republican senators talking about health care. The president had dinner with Senator Ted Cruz. He's talked to Senator Paul on the phone. He's working the phones. He's meeting with people in person.
No, I know.
And I think legislation, as President Trump, is really a great sweet spot for him because so far everything has been executive in nature. But this being the first big piece of legislation under his presidency, it's so appropriate that he's doing what leaders do. He's listening. He's negotiating. He's receiving many different inputs. But everybody knows, as is always the case, President Trump is the ultimate deal maker, but he's also the ultimate decision maker.
Sheryl Sandberg would be happy. You said he's leaning in. Did you read her book? It's really good.
But this is the ultimate spark plug, though, for all of his plans, because you got to pass this first, and then comes tax reform, infrastructure.
All the education reforms he's talked about, and the budget will be presented this Thursday too. You have $54 billion in defense spending. We need a stronger military. We've been under-investing in our military, and there's an additional $30 billion supplemental in there as well.
There is. Wait. So John McCain, when he says $54 billion isn't enough, he should keep in mind there's a $30 billion supplemental coming.
There is, and there's additional funding for border control, and there's additional funding for veterans. But anyway, we have just underinvested in our military, and this is something that the president promised out on the campaign trail, that he would never forget our veterans, our military. He talks about them being demoralized, underfunded, demoralized, and really just people who need equipment and resources to do their jobs.
You know what's interesting is if this is an opportunity for Republicans, because you work for a deal maker. And if the House and Senate go Democrat, he's going to do deals with Democrats. So it's up to Republicans to do something that he can work with, because he's going to be there 4 years, and these Republicans aren't if they're not productive.
So the president would like to have a Republican House and Senate. We're very happy that the voters said the excuse of divided government is over. We actually want somebody who's going to solve problems and give him Republican House and Senate. Frankly, Republican state legislatures and Republican governors also, largely in Republican control. I think that's called causation, not coincidence, that people want problems solved. You have in the White House a disruptor for an entrenched bureaucracy who went to Washington owing no one anything, and who in these first 53 days has made good on a number of promises, not least of which draining the swamp, but also being able to effectuate solutions, not just talk about them. You know, people are great talkers, but he's been a man of action, and I think you see this most specifically in the repeal and replace.
You talk about draining the swamp. Yesterday, or over the weekend at least, he asked for 46 resignations. One of them refused, and that was this prosecutor for the southern part of New York. He refused, and so he was fired. Mainstream media had a heyday with this, said that this was abnormal, yet other administrations have done this in the past. What's your reaction, or what's the president's reaction?
This is just not a news story. It's a lot of noise, not much news, because it's very uniform and it's very common for presidents to ask for the resignations of political appointees like ambassadors and like U.S. attorneys. The past few presidents have done this, and we made it uniform. The president made it uniform so that there were no carve-outs. There was no special treatment. The only two people who, well, are kind of exempted, if you will, are the people who are having a different role in the administration, Mr. Rosenstein and Dana, who's the acting Deputy Attorney General. But other than that, it's uniform across the board.
Well, what about the fact that apparently this fellow went in and talked to Donald Trump, I think it was in November, and then came out and said, yeah, it looks like I'm going to be on for a while.
Free Pahara.
That's the way he expressed it, but the fact is that this is just what, I mean, this is what presidents do routinely. I don't think it's a big news story.
The mainstream media is saying, well, maybe the president changed his mind, or maybe Mr. Barrera simply didn't understand what was being talked about.
The commonality and the uniformity of the resignations is the key here.
Why is the president going to Nashville?
The president's going to Nashville to take his case directly to the people with respect to particularly repeal and replace. And he also will be talking about other pieces of his agenda. I'm sure he'll be talking about the incredible job growth, job creation, the low unemployment rate, the fact that you have many different industries responding to his presidency in these early days, Brian, by committing to not bring jobs to Mexico, by committing to expand, attract, retain a great American workforce, and also to expand here on our soil and not go abroad. You see investment, energy investment. We're talking about infrastructure. By the time he gets there, the budget will be almost completed. Tax reform.
That's going to be this week, right? We're going to see his budget.
Another busy week for him. And the fact is that he'll go out there and he'll bring his case directly to the people. I mean, he needs to cut through the noise and the silence. He is our best spokesperson by far. And the noise and the silence of the news, sometimes they don't want to cover anything at all what he's doing. That's the silence. And then there's noise, things that are either misinterpreted or undercovered or, frankly, just unfairly covered. I think Donald Trump is at his best as the president when he takes his case directly to the people. He's the most brilliant communicator and most natural connector I've ever seen. And so the more he can do that and get out of Washington and take his case right to the people, I think the best it is. But it'll be a national event, too. People will see it on the TV live and in person.
Kelly, will you stick around?
Yes, of course.
For a few more minutes after this break? We want to talk to you, continue our conversation with you.
More pizza?
President Trump has to provide the American people, not just the Intelligence Committee, but the American people with evidence that his predecessor, former President of the United States, was guilty of breaking the law, because our Director of National Intelligence, General Clapper, testified that there was absolutely no truth to that allegation. So I think the president has one of two choices: either retract or to provide the information that the American people deserve, because if his predecessor violated the law, President Obama violated the law, we've got a serious issue here, to say the least.
All right, we have Kellyanne Conway, advisor to the president, on the Kirby couch with us. We want to get your response to that. He's saying either prove it or drop the accusations.
So what I was just tweeting out is that we're very happy that the House and Senate Intelligence Committees have agreed to add this piece of the investigation to their existing attenuated, unproven investigation about Russia and the campaign. And we will comment further after those findings are made clear. I also would note on a different program yesterday that Congressman Adam Schiff of California, a Democrat often on TV, said that he will ask Director Comey about this when he has him in front of the committee later this month.
Sure.
So this is, this is ongoing, but we'll comment further after the investigation.
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that at least Michael Flynn was wiretapped. I mean, the New York Times said he was wiretapped. That's how they got his end of where he was talking to the Russian people.
And you know what this is about? The president has made very clear that he's incredibly concerned about these leaks from the intelligence and security communities. They're coming from somewhere, where you have a readout of his private calls with other heads of states, where you have that particular incident that you've mentioned, Steve. So we know this happens, as goes Trump Tower, though. We'll see where these investigations lead.
So is the president disappointed in the past president? And he thought it was going to be a good transition, and now it looks as though, from what he tweeted out last Saturday saying that he tapped my lines, to he believes that Obamacare was time to blow up in 2017? Does he have a new view of the past of his predecessor?
Well, we were very pleased to receive so much public help from President Obama and some of his senior advisors, meaning they were out there saying we want a smooth transition. That's what democracies need, is a smooth transition in power. But now it does seem that some of President Obama's former staffers or perhaps his supporters are out there organizing against this president's agenda and perhaps, you know, going out and making statements that aren't particularly helpful or true to that peaceful transition of power.
Sure.
So,
and what about the people who are embedded in government?
well,
who
that's
have
the biggest
burrowed
problem
in?
of all. You've got folks there that, you know, we saw the New York
State
Times
Department,
article.
Department of Justice.
That's right. You've got, and this is serious. This is where the alleged leaks are. In other words, you've got people in there who aren't supporting this president and his agenda. Right. And I would just point out, the day after his masterful joint session address to Congress, which was lauded across the aisle, the New York Times ran an article that said the Obama administration was in a rush to preserve and sprinkle around the government intelligence information. They weren't expecting Donald Trump to be the president, right. And so they were in this rush to do that. Why would you do that if it wasn't to hurt?
Are you confident you can find the leak?
Well, I'm confident that the president is very focused on this, because he's absolutely correct, Ainsley, that we can't have intelligence and national security leaks in a way. This is not a partisan issue. This imperils our national security. It's serious stuff.
Right, 500 positions now, no nominees for. Is that going to change? Is there a pathway in the administration to get these nominees out there?
Yes, our Office of Personnel is very busy at all times, and the fact is we've got many qualified men and women who are applying for these positions. The Democrats held up our cabinet nominees for so long, we still don't have them all confirmed. I mean, I think that the fact that the president was able to get so much done in the first 53 days with so many sure. pieces of it, lacking a cabinet secretary in that particular department or agency, is that much more remarkable. But they've completely broken all records in terms of the obstruction and the resistance to just simple confirmation hearings of the cabinet nominees. So that has to stop.
All right, Kellyanne Conway, you got to catch a flight and go back to work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Texas and Florida, they've got to understand this. If we don't get this done, I'm not sure what would happen next year, Judge, in our midterm elections if we don't deliver on this key promise by the president and by all of us who campaigned. So our caucus, the Freedom Caucus as well, have just got to swallow hard and understand perfect can't be the enemy of good. We have to move this over to the Senate. We have to do it in the next 2 weeks. And we're counting on them as part of our team to not upset this apple cart, because we're not going to give them their definition of perfect. It just is not going to happen.
So this is Paul Ryan's bill. So what does Paul Ryan do to convince those guys who were digging their heels in and saying, look, we got elected as these conservative, financially conservative, you know, tax, whatever they are, hawks? How does he convince them?
Well, we've had meeting after meeting where he has stood up and he said, we're on a team. We are in the majority. We're not in the minority anymore. We don't have Obama as our president. It's time to understand the American public has trusted the Republicans with the House, the Senate, and the White House. And we have to act, you know, in a manner that the public is expecting to get things done and not just to argue about them. So it's going to be a showdown. There's no two ways about it.
Right.
There's going to be a showdown, and we are counting on our Freedom Caucus members to do the right thing for our party, because, again, woe be our party come midterm elections if we're going to the polls and we didn't deliver on health care or tax reform.
Is the argument that the individual mandate and the employer mandate being eliminated, should that be enough to convince them to come to your side?
Yeah, there's no question, Judge. All of a sudden now, those people that were working part-time jobs at 39 hours that got cut to 26 hours can go back to a 39-hour part-time job. Companies that want to grow beyond 49 employees to 55, 65 employees, they can now do that without a penalty. And the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of penalties, taxes, and fees, when they're gone, are going to be a jump start to our economy. This is what we're trying to do to get the economy moving, create jobs, and eliminating the individual mandate and the employer mandate should be enough for our Freedom Caucus to understand just how good this is.
Okay, what kind of horse trading goes on? I mean, you know, what do you guys have to leverage other than, you know, a stare down or do the right thing, which for some reason, that maybe it's the prosecutor in me or the cynicism in me doesn't convince me is going to do the job. What do you leverage?
Well, I mean, there has been some talk, and I don't know that it's going to go anywhere, about the cutoff date on the current expansion plan. Instead of it being January 1st of 2020, perhaps it could be January 1st of 2019. There's things of that sort. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen, but there are some tweaks. There's always a few tweaks. You know, perhaps when does a particular fee or tax roll off? But it's not going to be anything major. I mean, the deductible or the refundable tax credits to help the lower income people buy them, we have to have those. Yeah. Some form of expansion has got to move forward. 31 states expanded Medicaid. They're going to have to cut the federal piece from 90% down to whatever the states normally paid. Let's call it 50% in New York, 73% in West Virginia.
So more deal making.
There's not much, but no, there's really not much more we can do. On our 27-hour debate on the bill, not one single amendment, not one, was passed.
All right. Congressman Collins, thanks for joining us tonight.
Very good to be with you, Judge.
Now to WikiLeaks and its release of internal CIA files that detail the agency's ability to hack into your smartphones and smart TVs. Joining me now is Carrie Cordero, former counsel to the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security. All right, Carrie, thanks for coming back and joining us here at Justice. Now, one of the things that we found out this week was that thousands of documents, as described by Julian Assange's WikiLeaks, are now apparently available or visible, and that we thought were private. And unfortunately, after 2010 and Chelsea Manning, I think most of us just assume that information within the intelligence community was being protected. And then with Snowden, we just assumed everything was being tightened up after that in 2013 with the NSA. And I think that you, having particular experience in this area more than most, would understand that this kind of information being available or being, vulnerable to hacking is extremely dangerous to us and needs to be more protected. What is the status of all of this?
Well, thanks for having me on. Absolutely. This has been a continual problem. You mentioned this week's release by WikiLeaks included over 8,000 documents that they purport to include information about very classified and sensitive CIA hacking abilities. And it does come on the heels of about 7 years now worth of high-profile, either unauthorized disclosures, leaks, or hacks of either sensitive or classified information that the government retains.
And why isn't the government in a position to protect this information? Now, I understand, Carrie, that if someone walks out the door with information and we can't figure out who we can, expect to, keep a confidence and who we can't. But when someone from outside the government is able to hack information inside of the government, that's a real problem.
It is. Well, each of these cases represents a different type of problem.
Right.
So if you look at the 2010 Manning case, the 2013 Snowden case, and then according to at least the most recent reports today, even in the Wall Street Journal regarding this latest CIA case, these are potentially insider threat issues. Right. In other words, individuals who have access and who are trusted individuals, in some cases government contractors, who then steal that information and facilitate through WikiLeaks, in this case and in the 2010 case, their public exposure.
Well, Congressman Trey Gowdy actually said something like, it's no more than 30 people that we have to look at in the FBI and the NSA that could be responsible for this, and we have to use whatever powers that we have legally to, confront them and get this information from them. But, Carrie, I want to quickly, before we run out of time, discuss the fact that, there was a time when, we kind of put an end to a lot of this.